Thank you very much, Edith, for this really nice introduction. I'm super happy to be here today. And in this session, I present a best practice case from one of our recent shared projects, client projects, a collaboration between BLC and Plunet. Yeah, the title says it all. Many brands, one system. Let's take a closer look at what that means. Yeah, together with our client, we set out to find an answer to the major question: how can a global company with many brands and decentralized structures bring its translation processes into one shared system? That was, and it still is, a big task. And now I'll show you how we worked on it. Here's a quick overview about what I'm going to talk about today. I will start with a short introduction and also about the use case we have worked on. Then we look at the starting point and our solution approach. After that, I will show you how we brought all the brands into one system. And finally, I'm going to share some of the challenges and the lessons we've learned on the way. Before we start diving into the project, I want to say about a few words about BLC. BLC, first of all, we do not translate. BLC is a consultant agency from Düsseldorf. We consult our clients in the fields of language technology, processes, and strategy. We have our 20th anniversary this year. And we cover all fields of customers, from medium-sized machine manufacturers to public sector and also global enterprises. It's important to mention that we are independent and of any specific tool or vendor, but we have strong partnerships in the industry. So a short overview about how BLC supports its clients. And now it's the only time when I'm going to mention AI. But just like in this project, we help to find the right strategy together with a tailored approach for our clients. We share our knowledge openly. We also provide managed services and operations to support our customers with all kinds of language systems. And in addition, we have terminology experts in the team who specialize in building terminology databases, designing processes, and applying terminology effectively. What brings me to another key area of our expertise. It's all about data, collecting, cleaning, and preparing language data for all kinds of applications, and also for AI, of course. A few words about me. Before I joined BLC, I've been working at different language service providers. I'm a cultural scientist. I've studied in Frankfurt an der Oder. But the really interesting question today is, which is the client we are going to talk about? I can't name the client at this point since it's an ongoing project. But I can share some key facts so you might understand the scale. It's a globally operating enterprise with highly complex consumer products. Everybody of you already touched several times such a product. And this group consists of many brands. These brands are independent and work differently. They serve different customer segments on the market. And therefore, each of them has its own unique identity. However, they all share high regulation and high quality expectations in their products, as well as in their language quality and, of course, processes. To keep it confidential, I use today the metaphor of a family connected by ties, each member with his own unique character and occasionally also with a different opinion. How it all started. BLC got involved at the point a few years ago when the single brand setup was being built, like single brand, like the mom. The leading brand was setting up an environment using Plunet as an entry point and as an underlying CAD tool, Trados GroupShare. At the same time, an API was being developed to connect the editorial systems to Plunet. Yeah, but how do the other brands fit in this setup? To find it out, there were different key players coming together. Of course, the translation department representatives from each brand, since they are the end users of the system at the end. The IT department was involved as central administration provider for all the systems, and there was also a third party provider for the creation of the API. Plus the representatives of the system vendors, in this case, of course, Plunet and RWS. And BLC had the honorable role to make sure that the system implementation was aligned with the business needs for all brands, and reviewing everything carefully and also coordinating between the different parties. Yeah, and all together we set out to explore how we could scale the initial setup to the other brands within the group. To reach this goal, we first needed to get a clear overview of the situation and the requirements. And what did we find? We found at least 5 brands, plus sibling brands, means independently acting language departments within the brands. In addition, we found a highly fragmented landscape of processes and providers. Each brand has its own translation processes from, let's say, super manual to completely automated without any PM interaction on the way. There are many, many different translation service providers involved, and a whole bunch of editorial systems where the magic of the translation lies, because they have the large volumes to be translated at a super short turnaround and with the respective quality, of course. Regarding the system landscape, we had to deal with different APIs. Of course, the one between Plunet and GroupShare, and another one that was being built between the editorial systems and Plunet. And of course, we faced some strategic needs. There was a slightly outdated homemade translation system in place that needed to be replaced for security reasons. Of course, automation and streamlining of processes was also the key. So to dive into the reality, I can give you a short overview how the tool infrastructure for monobrand looked like. The entry point is the Plunet Business Manager with Customer Portal and Vendor Portal, with a GroupShare integration underlying. GroupShare distributes Trados Studio packages for offline translation for external translators. There are the different stakeholders, so the external translators, so LSPs mainly work within the vendor portal and work on offline studio packages. There, as we expected, there is a large range of different file types created by the authors, the already mentioned editorial systems, and there was the API that was created during this time to serve the transfer of text directly to Plunet without interaction. Yeah, that is the situation for one brand, but how can we bring the rest of the beloved family into this system? Actually, it's simple. you take a big virtual table and everyone comes together and all topics and requirements are laid out on the table. And we had a lot of them, of course. This is just a small part of the topics we discussed about. For example, how does the UI look like? How has the UI to look like for use for all the brands? How is it possible to communicate independently, brand-specific, to outside language service providers out from the system? How can I manage both internal and external resources, and what rights should they have? Who is allowed to see what? And what should be definitely stay hidden? Big brand love. And what processes are already in place, and where are the gaps, and how can we also automate along the way? These and many more topics we have been working through, and we are still at it. But that's how we finally were able to kick things off. First, we gathered all the requirements of the different brands and also the other stakeholders and aligned them. At the same time, we built up a good system knowledge of both, mainly BlueNet, but of course also for the RWS component. The API was further developed in parallel, which was good because then we were able to implement also the multi-brand requirements on this way. We also worked closely together directly with the editorial systems to share the requirements and to align the processes. There was a complete restructuring of group share. Each brand received mainly its own root organization, and also shared resources were put in a correct place in the group share environment. And of course, at the heart of it all, coordination, open discussions, and finding solutions together. Yeah, so let's take a look how we made the system usable for the whole brand. So one of the brand brought a completely new editorial systems, and this was successful connected via the API to BlueNet. The customer portal was reworked. I'm coming to this in a second. The admin settings were aligned to work across the enterprise for all brands. New resources, mainly LSPs and workflows, were set up for brand-specific needs. And both the API and group share now speak multi-brand. What does this look like in practice? Let's take a look at the central entry point, which is the customer portal. The customer portal is basically the same for everyone all over the enterprise, but we have developed a way to speak to the whole brand family while still addressing each brand individually. On the one hand, we show group-wide fields and texts carefully aligned to work for everyone. And at the same time, we use text modules to collect brand-specific information for order processing and address the users in a way that they feel familiar and tailored, so they feel right at home. Speaking of the portal, we come to the admin settings that were the key field of alignment for the different brands, because the admin settings apply to all users, no matter which brand they belong to. So this required particularly close coordination. We started separating the brands by using company codes as a hard cut between the brands. This allows a clear separation of views, for example, when it comes to customers and projects. At the same time, we use the right groups to bring flexibility. So each brand has the freedom to grant access or restrict access based on their internal needs and roles. And we expanded the properties to include new document types and translation categories. One key addition was the brand, property brand, which ensures that external resources are clearly and correctly assigned. And we overworked the job section to have a strong and flexible tool set to adapt the workflows and to create an individual adaptation. The document templates needed special care because they needed to be separated to address the outside vendors, the external partners, as an individual brand. Yeah. So, and we had a golden rule: only skilled admins have access to the admin section, and no changes without prior alignment, prior discussion, prior testing, prior struggling sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. But now let's take a look how we worked with the shared resources. At the beginning, it's easy. The leading brand had a bunch of linguists, external resources, mainly large LSPs, and orders translation or interpretation jobs from them. So far, so good. But then the other brands came in, brought their own linguists, had completely different linguists, and also shared linguists. Means that 2 or more brands order translation from the same linguist, but with different price structures because they have different requirements, different document types. So we needed to find an automatable solution for that. Basically, in BlueNet, we set up the resources as generally shared. We had to make sure that these shared resources are paired with separate price lists, so that each brand can order based on its own rules. To do that, we created a very strict naming convention that clearly assigns each price list to a specific brand. We took the property brand for this. And every price, so that's tagged for automatic use. I will come to this in a second. The result is lots of price lists, many, but named properly, so there are no mix-ups. Now let's take a look how we can automate this. The central piece of the puzzle here is the workflows. We have another golden rule, that is that we don't share workflows across the brands. So workflows are always brand individual and also named accordingly. The underlying structure is quite unified. The structure is quite similar. So the integration with the cut tool is streamlined and looks the same. But still, there is enough flexibility to tailor each brand's workflows according to their needs. What really matters is keeping things organized with a clean, again, and consistent naming and clear assignment to each brand, specific customers or customer groups. What we achieve with that is we can have a high degree of automation or even a high degree of manual work if required in some cases, and each brand can design individual workflows. So in practice, it looks like this in a highly automated workflow. We start with the first automated job. It's the run cat tool job. So the API, you remember, that was being built from the editorial system, brings directly to this, triggers directly the first job. And this first project job places my project directly into the current location in GroupShare. So it applies the brand-specific project templates, it controls the proper use of the translation memories. So there's a technical separation, brand separation, right from the start of the project. Next, the design of the TRA job, so translation step, allows a high degree of brand individuality, automated or manual. Thanks to the brand property, you remember, only the right linguists get displayed or can be ordered for that job. And another highlight that is configured in the TRA job is the use of the correct document template set. So we make sure that the brand addresses as the right brand the linguists. So also a separation here. Yeah, to wrap it slowly up, I will share our main challenges. I could continue with other examples, but I think I can give a short overview at this point of our challenges. Yeah, as I mentioned, we have the shared administration. This setup only works if brand admins are well trained and aware about their impact when changing things in the admin section. And they have to know exactly what they are doing. This was the case, definitely. We are always interacted and exchanged experiences, and each single change, even a small checkbox to be checked or unchecked, had to be aligned with the whole team. Not with the IT, but with the language department representatives. Yeah, one of the very interesting discussion fields has been the customer portal. Less is more. We focused on clarity and essentials, and the brands had a certain flexibility with using the text fields, but not too much. Automation. There was the custom API development and enhancement for the editorial systems, and a dedicated PlueNet feature for the PlueNet integration, for the cut tool integration to make it work across the brands. Another big topic has been the pricing visibility, as the linguists, the external resources are shared. This had to be restricted with both a technical feature from PlueNet and, on the other hand, by the enterprise with a contractual ring fencing from the client side to ensure transparency without overexposure of data. The brand-specific external communication is achieved by only using branded workflows. And so this is because this is the place where the right document template is linked. And the golden rule to avoid overlapping responsibility is and was, do not touch what does not carry your brand name. Yeah, so the whole family entered, at least in theory, the system. At this point, we are still in the middle of the project, but we look back to a successful go live of a part of the family and a part of the editorial systems. So you see the family smiling. The journey is not over yet. We are still working together on more go lives. But the first step has been done, definitely. And I would like to share some learnings, also of my personal learnings from this project. Yeah, and again, the smiling family in the background. Too many custom processes and exceptions make things complicated. This is what we've learned. But if you manage to streamline them, then every brand can work together as one big family. Yeah, yes, technical scaling is possible, but it requires open and transparent collaboration and sometimes the willingness to compromise. The journey is not over yet, but even now I can already look back on a truly positive and constructive collaboration of all stakeholders, the brand representatives, the IT, which is not always the case in the world, we know, the tool system providers as BlueNet, all working towards a shared goal. That's essential for success, and we are definitely need the spirit ongoing for the journey ahead.